I don't know if you have any little sort of hang-ups. I do. Well, join us this morning. Singles, couples, families, gather the kids around, all ages, people from all walks of life, and let's explore God together right here and now. We might be separated, but we can still be together. Welcome to our living room session again. I do have a few hang-ups, there's no question about it. Like, it drives me nuts when I pan fry an egg and when you crack and the yolk kind of breaks. There's nothing you can do. It all just kind of blends in and you can't separate it. You know, whenever I eat a meal, I hate combining all the foods on my plate, mixing them all together. Do you know what I mean? I like to keep the peas and the carrots, all the foods separate. You know, how can you combine it and mush it all together? There's no question that I have my hang-ups. I don't know what your hang-ups are. We all have them. We all have them. And it happened to me just this morning. I broke my egg yolk when cracking it into the pan, and it all combined and it messed up and the egg white was just destroyed. But it did get me thinking about a passage in the Bible. A passage in the Bible that helps us see that the difference between things, that there is a difference between things separated and things combined. It talks about the way that Jesus changes us when we place our faith in Him. It's from the book of Galatians in chapter 2 verse 20, and it's where the Apostle Paul writes, "I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave Himself for me." It's an interesting passage. And here's the truth in it all. It is no longer important that we appear righteous, to be driven to impress God. You know, for the Christian, Christ lives in you, and that is all that you need. The life you live, the life you see me living, is not mine, but it is lived by faith in the Son of God. It is lived by faith in Jesus, who loved me and gave Himself for me. And I'm not going to go back on that. I'm not going to change that. No way. And that's what the Apostle Paul is getting at here. The Christian life is not difficult. It is impossible. Only one person has ever lived the Christian life, and that was Jesus. And right here now today, He desires to go on living His life through Christians whom He indwells. You know, I think it was J.B. Phillips, an old English Bible scholar, who wrote, "The great difference between present-day Christianity and that of which we read in the letters like in the book of Galatians, the great difference is that to us, Christianity is primarily a performance, while to them it was a real experience." We are always here today trying to reduce Christianity to a code or to a best set of rules for the heart and for the life. And just to challenge you today, to the men and to the women of the first century church, like in Galatians, Christianity instead is quite plainly the invasion of all of their lives by a new quality of life altogether, a total radical change that Jesus brings, and they do not hesitate to describe this as Christ living in them, just like Paul did in Galatians 2:20. Christ living and alive in you. Christ living in me. You know, as the Bible reveals to us, when someone places their faith in Christ Jesus, He comes to dwell within us by the means of His Holy Spirit. Just go and read about it in Romans chapter 8, verse 9. And Jesus' purpose for dwelling, for living inside of us as believers is so that His life might be lived through our life. That's the call. That's the mission of Jesus, that He would live out through you. It's not about you, it's about Christ living out through you. It's about Him living His life through you. You know, someone shared with me years ago when I was really wrestling with moving into ministry and moving up here. They said, Simon, don't waste Christ's life in you. And that's true for you. Don't waste Jesus' life in you, because for the Christian, we're all in ministry. Doesn't matter who you are, or how old you are, where you've come from, we're all in ministry. You know, when we choose to follow Jesus and to place our faith and to place our trust in Him, our old self dies, and therefore Jesus gives us a new self, and our new self is created by God's Holy Spirit through faith. And the image of your new self is Jesus. The image of your new self is Jesus Christ Himself. So I wonder if you would take some time to reflect on that. Do you see Christ in you? You know, depending where you're at, let me ask you two things to consider. Firstly, if you are a follower of Jesus and living out that new self, Christ in you, why don't you take some time to reflect and to write down just some dot points of your story. Jot down some notes, jot down something about your testimony. What is your story? What is it that you have left behind, so to speak, when you chose to welcome Jesus alive in you and thus saying, you know, goodbye to that old self? You know, who would you be without Jesus? Just consider that now. Take some time to think about that. Secondly, if you're not a follower of Jesus, that's okay. That's okay. Can I just encourage you just to consider that right now God is speaking to you, and there's nothing more that He wants to do than to show you how much Jesus changes a life and how He will absolutely change yours. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, how young or old you are, Jesus wants to live out through you. He wants to live out through you. And can I assure you that this will not only change your story, but will completely change your everything. Everything will change when Jesus comes in. And kids that are tuned in right here now, that is true for you as well. And I wanted just to share a really awesome reminder of a story that changed. Kids, why don't you check this out, and let's watch this little video from Saddleback Kids on the story of the prodigal son.
This is Jesus,
Hey-o!
who is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. While Jesus was on earth, He taught everyone about God's love. He healed many people from their sickness, performed many miracles like calming storms, and even raised people from the dead.
Wahoo!
Jesus taught everyone about God's love. All kinds of people would come to hear Jesus speak, including tax collectors and people who made bad choices. This made the Pharisees and Jewish leaders mad.
Yuck.
They didn't think that Jesus should be around these kind of people. So Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father,
Excuse me?
I want my share of your estate now, before you die.
Okay.
So his father agreed and gave his son his inheritance.
Woohoo!
A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings
See ya.
and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money in wild living.
Huh?
About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land,
Aw, man.
and he began to starve.
Hey, you!
He convinced a local farmer to hire him,
Thank you.
and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the food he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. But no one gave him anything. Finally, he said to himself, "At home, even the servants have food enough to spare, and here I'm dying of hunger.
I know.
I will go home to my father and apologize and ask him to take me on as a servant." So he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son.
Son!
His son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son." But his father said to the servants, "Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and now has returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found." So the party began.
Ah, yeah!
Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house,
Huh? Hey, you!
and he asked one of the servants what was going on. "Your brother is back," he was told, "and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return."
Woohoo! All right, party time! All right! Yahoo!
The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him,
Oh, man!
but he replied, "All these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after wasting your money, you celebrate by giving him a great feast." His father said to him, "Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day. For your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found."
I don't know. Do you feel lost or do you feel found? Do you feel found? What a fantastic reminder that God always welcomes us back into His love, and only Jesus makes that possible. You know, you are a prodigal. I am a prodigal son every time that we search for unconditional love where it cannot be found. And let me assure you, you can be found. But what is your testimony? What is your story? You know, how are you going to allow all that we're going through at the moment to change you in some way? You know, a friend shared with me a really great little meme on Facebook, I think it was, that said after 3 days of isolation inside of a fish, Jonah came out with a mission and changed a city. After 40 days of isolation on a mountain, Moses came out with 10 commandments and changed a nation. And after 40 days of isolation in the wilderness, Jesus came out in power and changed everything. Changed everything. Let me ask you, what are you coming out of this isolation with? What's your story? What needs to change maybe in your life? What is Jesus trying to change in you as He lives out through you? Just continue thinking about that question now. What's your story? What's your story? And I want to share a story with you now. And after that, just take some time within the song that follows just to really consider, what is your story? What's your testimony of Jesus alive and at work in your life? Just ask yourself, who am I not because of Jesus, so that you can really now define who you are with Jesus.
Hi, I'm Georgia and I live in Kyneton. And actually the way that I got to know about Kyneton Baptist was we saw a little YouTube clip talking about Kyneton Baptist and what that community meant and the times of the church services. So we went down and met a whole lot of people that were so welcoming, and we've come to know a lot of people now, and it's been a really good support for us. I have worked at the Youth Justice Centre in Malmesbury, and that's what brought me up this way. And being a singer, I'm in Melbourne a lot, but singing there, but in Kyneton area, that's what I do, working with the boys with the Youth Justice Centre. And also separately, the Social Foundry, we love getting a coffee from there, and that community too, as we've started to get to know them as well. When I was very young, maybe 3 or 4, I remember looking up at the sky and having a sense that there was, I guess this sense as a child would, that someone was watching over me or there was a God, and asking my parents, who now do believe in God but at the time didn't, and they kind of just didn't really engage in it, and it was kind of left. I remember when I was about 7 or 8, I met a family that lived across the road that went to church, and again it kind of planted a seed, and I saw what a sense of community that family had, and how, you know, just even praying before meals and like a real sense of faith that they had. I really liked that, and although we had a great family, there was a little bit of, you know, brokenness, and my dad had been married before, I had a half sister, and there could be a little bit of problems, so I saw the difference, but again, didn't really delve into it. When I was 16, 17 at high school, I was training to be a dancer in the Australian Ballet, and I had to lose weight for that, and I became really sick to the point where, I nearly died from just being really sick with like an anorexia type illness. And when I was in hospital, I had to spend a lot of time on my own, and a good family friend brought in a prayer book. It was just this beautiful book just full of prayers, and because I was on my own for 6 months, I couldn't see my mum, my dad, my family. I was very depressed, very isolated, and I was there to put on weight at the Royal Children's Hospital to get better so I could dance again and kind of, you know, go back to school. And I started praying, but again, no one had really talked to me too much about it. I just was in total desperation of, I'm alone, if I don't feed myself and get better, I won't be alive. And mentally I started to get very depressed, and I started to sense that there was some sort of, again, I was praying to God. When I got better and I went back to school, a lot of the teachers at my school, St. Columba's, they were great, but not all of them had a true relationship with God in a lot of ways. So our classes about God, or our religious classes, they didn't have any heart in it, and I could sense it. So I didn't really believe, and, you know, sort of a bit of a classic story. I started mucking around at school and wouldn't listen, and, you know, looking back, it was pretty bad. I'd really kind of stop others from learning about God in my class, because I was angry, I guess, because of what had happened to me and in my family, and I started drinking and, you know, like just started going off the rails. My principal called my parents in. She said, you know, we've got 6 months with her, otherwise she can't be here, she's too disruptive. And that was in year 9, I guess I was about 16. And then next thing, I had met this amazing lady who, her name was Geraldine Martin, and I haven't seen her to this day, but she was a missionary in South Africa. And she got told by my principal, this is a problem year level, and especially this girl, Georgia, she's just, you know, not listening, and she's not doing any work. And anyway, she kind of felt like she wanted to help me. And she took me to church, and at first, again, it was not relating. I could see, it was a Catholic church, and it was the priest was lovely, and the messages were beautiful, but at that time in my life, I wasn't getting it. She started to work with me over 6 months and talk to me about, and take me to this Catholic church and talk to me about how Jesus was real, and that she asked me what had been going on in my life, and she was the first person to ask me. And so at that point, I connected someone that believed in Jesus, that went out of her way to ask me what was going on. All of the other teachers were like, she's a problem, we don't care what's happening, you know, she lives in a good area, she's got good parents, it's her, she's the problem. Whereas this teacher had really taken an interest in me. Changed my life, but she told me to she said, you've only got one life, do well in year 11 and 12. So I've started dancing again because I got better, and I got a Premier's Award for my self-choreographed piece, so it totally turned my life around. So I left school and I got into a science degree, and around that time I kind of didn't have any friends or any community that believed. So looking back, I sort of fell even into more of a hole. So I was going well at school because I had teachers, and I had, that Geraldine Martin teacher, she looked after me and guided me through year 12. Left school, got into a science degree, and things got a little bit worse. I decided to take the year off university. My parents were putting a bit of pressure on me to do science, and I wanted to do music and dancing. So I went down a destructive path and, started, drinking, got into taking drugs, got into a lot of things that were not good for my soul. The whole time I felt I knew something wasn't right, but because I didn't really have a relationship with Jesus, I didn't know how to access that. I didn't without that lady that had come into my life. I kind of just went down an even worse path. A very pivotal moment was meeting two girls that year. I met a girl called Tanya who goes to Lifehouse Church, and another girl called Vanessa. At the same time, they both took me to separate churches, so it's a pretty crazy story. One was a Pentecostal, church, and the other was a Catholic church where it was quite quiet, and it was a weekday church service, so totally different. But the one day when I went to this Catholic church and I was just sitting on my own, my friend really talked to me about Jesus, and I still can't really explain what happened, but at that moment, I really got a really strong sense that Jesus was real for me, and that basically I said to her, I've done so many things, so I am not worthy of anyone. I didn't know love, basically. And then her and a priest and a pastor from another church at that same time all said the same thing to me. They said, that's the whole message of Jesus. It doesn't matter what you've done. He paid that price. He was on the cross. He sets you free. It's got nothing to do with that. And I got it. And I was bawling my eyes out. I told this pastor and this priest all these things that I'd done, and both of them in different times both said to me, Jesus sets you free, that's the point. And it was from then that literally my life changed. I started dancing again. I told my parents I did want to do science. It's hard to put in words how powerful this was in my life. I actually became a totally different person. Someone that I used to act out of fear because I didn't know I was loved. So, whatever it was, taking that drug or drinking or trying to find the right boyfriend or whatever it was, I was trying to find love, and then it wasn't good for my soul. And then after I knew Jesus, it was like I didn't need any of that. I was moving to Japan. When I got to Japan, that's when my life really changed, because I knew Jesus. And before I left, a priest and a pastor from another church both said to me, when you get there, you can choose to be two people. You can choose to be the old person that you were before you knew Jesus, or the new one. First night I arrived in Japan, I opened up my Bible in the hotel room. A lot of the people in my show were going out to party all night, and I decided to read the Bible. Every Wednesday night we'd have Bible study. And at this time, I started to really learn who Jesus was. I didn't have my mum and dad, I didn't have my family, I was 20 years old. And from that moment, it's the difference in me as a person is huge. When I was in high school, I maybe would get depressed, I would look to the wrong things. Now I was waking up every morning and praying and reading the Bible, and God was sending me other Christians. I met heaps of Christians from America, and we'd have this Bible study and worship every Wednesday. And I was dancing on stage and I was singing. And from that moment, which is, about 17 years ago now, that Jesus has just been the center of my life. And I was thinking about this morning or yesterday. The simple thing to say is that before Jesus, I didn't know I was loved, and after Jesus, I knew I was loved. So everything I did, whether it was, getting up and going for a run in the morning, I enjoyed that more, or going for a walk, and sometimes not doing that, obviously, but whatever it was, exercising, I enjoyed being outdoors more. If I was on stage, I knew that I was using my gifts for God. It wasn't about me. I didn't have that same fear. If I was singing, it was the same. If I was writing songs, it was the same. Everything was anchored in Jesus and not in fear. I really feel to say that I changed the way I looked at people. So before, I might be judgmental of people or kind of get depressed about things, whereas after knowing God and praying and reading scripture, I started I feel like this was a miracle that God allowed me to see people maybe the way he does. And I looked at people in a much more kind way of how, even if they weren't perfect, just to still keep loving them no matter what they've done. I've had friends hurt me, I've had family members hurt me, and just keep coming back and loving them. So that's how Jesus really revealed himself to me. Over the years, I have just asked Jesus, what do you want me to do? And the places he's taken me is crazy. You know, I'm in Kyneton, I've been working in a jail for 3 years. If you had told me I'll be working in a jail, I would have laughed at you. And my friends even say, you know, you're working there, you know, like, don't you know what some of those boys have done? And I'm like, well, we've all done something. And that takes me back to that 19-year-old when I said to that pastor and priest, I'm not worthy of Jesus' love because of what I've done. And that's when I'm working with the boys in the Youth Justice Centre. I focus on their good qualities. I pray before I go in, and we do music with them. And you know, right now I'm writing a lot of music with my band, The Saga. Again, that's been a miracle from God. My friend Alyssa and my partner Luke and I, we write this music. It's Christian music. It's been on Light FM. I've been writing music my whole life, but now I'm writing music that is scripture-based, not perfectly, but it's inspired by God. And just last week, my friend who isn't into her faith said to me, your song Fearless really helped me and my daughter. She was going through a divorce and her daughter's in grade 6. She's been really down. And the words in that song talk about not being afraid. And again, I knew that was a Jesus moment, because when we wrote that song, we prayed before we wrote it. So the way that God has changed my life is unbelievable. And I think sometimes putting it into words is hard, but the biggest message for me is before I knew Jesus, I didn't know I was loved, and afterwards I knew I was. So even now when I fall or I get down, I just always run back to Jesus, and he has just, there's so many miracles, and every day there's more. From working at the jail to writing my songs to meeting people at Kyneton Baptist, and just friends that are encouraging me on my faith journey. And there's still a lot more of my life to go, and I still don't know where God's going to take me, but I'm a lot more hopeful and excited, and know that God will use me if I am open to serve rather than it being about me. I can still live my dreams, but the dreams that God puts on my heart, because he's always got better plans than we could have even created ourselves. Yeah. I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter, I'm constantly writing and releasing music and singing. And if my life could be a song, it would be a song about how it's not about me, it's Christ living through me and Jesus leading me into the direction that he wants me to go. And so therefore, my whole life is laid down for whatever God wants to use me for, through music, through service, and that would be the song, something about Christ living through me.
You know, I think for a Christian, the Bible offers us some really beautiful wisdom about how Christ is alive in us. And Paul writes in Galatians 2:20, 1 Corinthians 15, and Philippians 2 verse 13. He says in Galatians, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Christ alive in us.
What gift of grace is Jesus my Redeemer? There is no more for heaven now to give. He is my joy, my righteousness and freedom, my steadfast love, my deep and boundless peace. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus. For my life is wholly bound to Him. Oh, how strange and divine, I can sing, all is mine, yet not I, but through Christ in me. The night is dark, but I am not forsaken. For by my side, the Savior, He will stand. I labor on in weakness and rejoicing, For in my need, His power is displayed. To this I hold, my shepherd will defend me. Through the deepest valley He will lead. Oh, the night has been won, and I shall overcome, yet not I, but through Christ in me. No fate I dread, I know I am forgiven. The future sure, the price it has been paid. For Jesus bled and suffered for my pardon, and He was raised to overthrow the grave. To this I hold, my sin has been defeated. Jesus now and ever is my plea. Oh, the chains are released, I can sing, I am free, yet not I, but through Christ in me. With every breath I long to follow Jesus, for He has said that He will bring me home. And day by day I know He will renew me, until I stand with joy before the throne. To this I hope, my hope is only Jesus. Oh, the glory evermore to Him. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me.
His name is victor, His name is power, His name is grace, who knows no bounds. And as He transforms my life, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me.
When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me.
Yet not I, but through Christ in me.
Yet not I, but through Christ in me.
Thanks, Georgia. You know, I hope you've taken some time really just to consider your story. Maybe you've even written down some notes. Or if not, do that this week. You know, take some time, pray about it, reflect on it. And I want to leave you with something just to reflect on and to think about. I don't know where you're at, but I do know that regardless of where you're at, God is doing a work in your life. And I wonder if you'd share that with someone. Who could you share your story with? Of not about you, but about Christ alive in you. Who could you share that with? Could it be a friend? Could it be a neighbor? Could it be a colleague? Who comes to your mind right now? Share that with them, not in a weird and awkward kind of way, just in a down-to-earth, open and honest way. And you might be surprised how it impacts them. You never know, just like Georgia's story shared, it could be your story, just like her teacher, just like her friends. It could be your story that Jesus uses to totally transform someone's life. You know, as followers of Jesus, as disciples, this is something we're called to do. Have a think about that. Or you might be right now asking lots of questions and not yet sure about this Jesus stuff. And I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you. Make sure that you reach out and have a conversation with someone. Drop us a line on our website at kynetonbaptist.org, or you could just comment wherever you're looking at here. Just comment here, and we would love to be in touch with you, just to chat further and to partner with you to help you to find and to follow Jesus, or simply just to chat and to learn from your questions, because we are all learners. And it's my hope that you would see Christ in you this week, to see Him living out in you, and to trust Him and to let Him lead you as you go about your day. You know, because you might be amazed at what He wants to work out in and through you. I want to leave you with that thought. God bless and go well.